Welcome back, parents. It's another day on this beautiful quest. So, today we're going to go really deep. We're going to be discussing something that is so controversial in the parenting world. You got it. We're going to go deep into discipline. To put it succinctly, here are my thoughts on discipline. In a nutshell, I do not believe in the traditional paradigm of discipline at all. Now, before you protest, hear me out. Let's examine what the traditional paradigm of discipline actually states, okay? It states that it is our job as parents to fix and correct the children, right? I've been talking about this all along. And if the child is bad, then the paradigm of discipline says, go ahead, yell at them, punish them, shame them, do whatever you need to do to correct that bad behavior. Now, it appears that there's nothing faulty about this idea. Kid is bad, you got to correct them. The problem is not in the intention per se. The problem is in the execution. How do we go about fixing our children's behaviors? Of course, when our kid does something wrong, we need to fix. But it's not about our desire to fix that's wrong. It's our approach in fixing it. The traditional way suggests that we inflict some sort of pain onto our children, as if they can only learn through pain. A timeout corner, a spanking, a yelling, or some type of punishment. This old paradigm is rooted in the idea that in order for our children to learn the right way to behave, in order for them to remember the right way to behave, they must undergo a certain degree of humiliation, shame, and pain. And without this, the old paradigm says there can't be any learning. Mix in this with some religious sayings that talk about sparing the rod and you will spoil the child. And put everything together and you have a really zealous conviction on the part of the parent that truly believes that it is only through the infliction of pain that the child will learn. And in fact, pain is serving the child's best interest. So let's take a common scenario. The parent asks the kid to clean his room. The kid, of course, doesn't do it for very justifiable reasons that the kid uses in his own head. So what does the parent do? Naturally, the parent starts to react, a version of yelling, screaming, spanking, calling the kid a few names, and then arbitrarily proceeding to take something away from the kid. We parents always just do one or two of these predictable 5 or 6 things. It's always the same things. Does this sound familiar to you? Well, this whole idea behind this style of parenting is that through this process, the child will remember that it must obey its parents. So you may wonder, why am I so unequivocally against this whole idea of discipline, even the word discipline? Well, the main reason is that this is not a teaching strategy. Really, in essence, it's an adult temper tantrum. It's not educating the child. You know, just because we are bigger and stronger, that doesn't mean we get to use any control, arbitrary technique, any threats to just get our way anytime we feel helpless, anytime we feel disrespected, just basically bully our children into subservience. Basically, this old methodology says that anytime the parent feels overstressed or over-fatigued or helpless, upset, angry, it doesn't matter that it's really coming from the parent's own life, which it almost always is. Nope. The parent has the right to simply unleash in an unmitigated fashion their fury any which way they like onto their children. So imagine really what this traditional methodology does is it gives this parent, who now we know is really an adult child, with this absolute unmitigated power to dominate another human being. It's no wonder parents run amok with this kind of power. It's too much power to give to a person who is not yet conscious. This kind of unrelenting power in the hands of an unconscious person is a dangerous thing indeed. And this is why so many parents, in the name of love and care, actually end up shaming or beating their children in an extremely harsh and unkind manner, leading their children to bear many scars for many decades in the future to come. This old model of discipline encourages a great complacency on the part of us parents. It, you see, doesn't make us question ourselves. It doesn't make us control or discipline ourselves. It just tells us, you're upset, get upset. And this proves to be really detrimental in the long run to the connection that we seek with our children. This old methodology of disciplining is really, in my opinion, downright lazy, because the parent never has to do any inner work. And it also can veer into the realm of being truly toxic. In my opinion, unleashing fury onto a child who hasn't yet developed, hasn't become aware of their own sense of self, is an egregious crime, for it is performed by an all-powerful parent on this hapless, helpless, immature being who is unable to defend themselves. So now what can we do differently? Well, in order for us to step into a new paradigm of parenting, where we honor the sovereign brilliance of each unique child, we need to daringly, maverickly, release all notions of the traditional paradigms of discipline. I know this seems like it is too out of the box. How can we be the only ones not to punish our children? How can we be the ones not to yell or scream? This seems like a ridiculous suggestion, I know. But it is only when we move away from that archaic paradigm of control and dare to step into a new energy where our main focus is to empower our children, only then will we raise healthy and whole children. So then you may ask, well, then what do we do when our kids act inappropriately? How do we address the negative behaviors? These are legitimate questions that conscious parenting does answer. There is a way to correct our children's negative ways without using control and punishment and shame. There is a way. It involves the art and discipline of creating conscious and sacred boundaries. Notice I said the discipline of creating boundaries as opposed to the art of disciplining. Whereas the latter, the art of disciplining, focuses on changing our children through the act of discipline, the former focuses on disciplining ourselves to change. You see, it is our lack of understanding of how to create appropriate boundaries that can result in what we call a disciplinary problem, as if it were the child's fault. You know, most of us don't even question our own role in our child's bad behaviors. That perhaps we are the co-contributors of that child's behavior, the co-creators of that child's behavior. And it is this lack of awareness where we put the entire onus on the child, saying it's all their fault, that creates our justification to now unleash our fury onto them. Imagine being a kid. I mean, you remember being a kid under the old paradigm of discipline, how frustrating it must have felt for you. Well, it feels the same for our children. How helpless making. Imagine our children, they're just growing. They're just being human. And they get punished for everything according to the whims and fancies of their parents. It sounds like a terrifying way to grow up, if you ask me. And the best thing? We think that our discipline is actually teaching our kids how to be more moral, compassionate, and kind. But it isn't doing anything of this sort. In fact, our children grow up more resentful, more frustrated, more angry, more bitter, and they're just waiting to now unleash this pent-up frustration onto the others in their life. Whenever we shame our children, they're not sitting there in the locked closet or in the dark basement thinking about how they can repent and how remorseful they are. No, that sense of shame creates this burning resentment inside our children, which they repress, and it's just a ticking time bomb that's just waiting to explode. It is only when we take the time to truly appreciate how toxic this whole paradigm of discipline truly is, only then, will we be daring to change it. Change it to what? Change it to conscious boundaries. But again, like all things in consciousness, it begins with the parent. It is only when the parent understands their own boundaries for their own lives that they can execute this in their children's lives. We need to learn to live the boundary. You know, I always say boundaries cannot be imposed. They cannot be created. Boundaries are lived. It is through the living embodiment of the boundary within the parent that the child begins to absorb these naturally. So for today's task, we're going to take on the insurmountable challenge of releasing the archaic paradigm of discipline. You know, everything begins with our thoughts. The reason we behave in a certain way, it's because we've made a decision in our thoughts. We've believed something. So today I would like you to challenge your belief systems that you are the discipliner of your child. And I want you to transform it into, I am the co-creator of my child's reality. I am the one who needs to embody conscious boundaries. And when I do, then I help my child embody those boundaries themselves. So if my child is having a hard time with boundaries, when I shift into being the co-creator, I take responsibility for how my child is set up for failure. So do you understand your task today? It is about shifting out of being your child's disciplinarian to being the co-creator of the boundaries. As we make this shift from being the controller to being the co-creator, our children will quickly absorb this energetic difference, and they will begin to naturally follow our ways without resistance, without conflict, without chaos. And as you go through today, I want you to become aware of your speech and thoughts. As I said, everything comes from our thoughts, and then it comes out in our speech. So I want you to notice how much of those thoughts and speech has been relying on the archaic forms of discipline. I cannot wait to hear how this challenge feels for you. And if it feels challenging, well, that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to feel challenging. So share your vulnerability. Share what's coming up for you. I would love to hear from you. And I cannot wait to see you back here tomorrow.